move. So Daniel Jeremiah is an NFL scout formerly of the Eagles, the Ravens, and the Browns. Terrific. He does the Chargers analyst work here in Los Angeles. Somebody I really trust on Twitter. It's @MoveTheSticks. Joy Taylor works with him. Daniel Jeremiah is now joining us, former scout for 3 teams. So I think this is interesting. Let's go. You released your mock draft. So now you're not predicting just who are the best players. These are where you think guys go. So let's start with the number 2 pick. Zach Wilson goes to the Jets. So you have Zach Wilson ahead of Justin Fields. You do have Carolina taking Justin, which makes sense to me. So why do you like Zach Wilson more than Justin Fields?
He played better. When you watch him this year, I don't think it was really close when you just study the tape and what he did. And I know with Zach Wilson, people are going to say, oh, who was he playing for? Who was he playing against? The competition. The throws that you see from him, Colin, they translate in any level of football against any opponent. I mean, they are wow throws. He's just loose. He's natural. There's a great instinctive flair to his game. He's an exciting player. The durability and the frame is a little bit of the concern, but when we see him on the hoof and we see the measurables, it's going to be darn near identical to Aaron Rodgers. So he's a talented player.
You have Atlanta at 4 taking Trey Lance. Now, I've seen his YouTube stuff. He's very active. That's all I get. You've seen more. Why do you like him more than Justin Fields?
It really just came down to decision-making. I mean, both these guys are what you want in terms of the physical tools. Big, strong. Justin Fields is a little bit faster, but you look at Lance, he can really run. They use him on some of the design quarterback run stuff as well. Competition level, a big difference, of course. But the decision-making for Trey Lance, he didn't turn the ball over his in 2019. He didn't have a pick. He threw his first pick in the only game he played this year. But he just makes outstanding decisions. There's a lot on his plate in that offense. If you remember going back to Carson Wentz coming out from there, under center, in the gun, protections, all that stuff has been handled with him. He doesn't have a lot of experience, Colin. He's a 1-year starter. So there's going to be some patience with him. But I think you're going to need some patience with Justin Fields as well. I think this is kind of a 2 or 3 year play for both those guys going forward.
So let's talk. You have Justin Fields 8 to Carolina. Many think he's the 2. What concerns you?
Well, there's times where he just gets a little bit stuck and locked on, and which causes him to be late on some throws. It causes him to take too many sacks. There's some bad tape this year. When you watch what Northwestern did, when you watch the Indiana game was not a great game for him. And then I know, he was phenomenal against Clemson. It is probably the best quarterback tape that anybody had this year was his game against Clemson. So I know it's in there. I know he can do it. But there's still things he needs to work on, really just speeding up his clock. When number 1 is there, when number 1 in the progression is there, he can let it rip. He can make every type of throw with velocity and accuracy. But when that's taken away, sometimes he just takes a little bit too long to get through the rest.
Okay, so I said yesterday there's about 3 or 4 players at draft that I think are can't miss. Other players, I think landing spot and coaching matters. My 3 were Trevor Lawrence, Penei Sewell, the left tackle from Oregon, and Pitts, the tight end from Florida. Do you have 3 guys that landing spots irrelevant? They're just going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, I have my top 50 list, which will come out next week, and it'll give you a little sneak peek. The top 3 players to me, Trevor Lawrence, would fall in that category. Right after him, to me, I think Jamar Chase from LSU and what he brings to the table would fall in that category. And then you go Kyle Pitts from Florida, the tight end. I think all those guys are unique, rare players that have, the traits that you want, the competitiveness that you want, and the production that you're looking for. So to me, those are 3 guys, 1, 2, 3 best players in the draft.
All right, I want everybody to look at this again. Daniel Jeremiah, his first mock draft. This is one of the mock drafts I really depend on because I'm a mock draft nerd, and I sit around at night eating crackers looking at everybody's mock draft. His is great. So the one thing that jumped out to me, you have Kyle Pitts going to the Niners at 12 with George Kittle. That will look like a pro wrestling thing. You're going to have guys that don't even look like other NFL players. My first takeaway is poor Sean McVay. Poor Pete Carroll. So you love Pitts, the player, as well.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal player, and that's why I think sometimes people struggle with the difference between a mock draft and how you rank the players in your top 50 list. Because what happens in a draft like this one, Colin, when you have 4 quarterbacks go in the top 8 picks, it's going to push people down. When you have teams with young quarterbacks with terrible offensive lines, you're going to see some teams go a little bit more towards need. And then you also have, when you look at the teams picking in the top 10, you look at Miami, who has Mike Gesicki. They're probably going to look to add a receiver. They feel okay at the tight end position. TJ Hawkinson already went to the Lions. They've invested in a first-round tight end. So that's how you get a player as special as Kyle Pitts. The third best player in the draft could fall outside of the top 10. And I knew 49er fans were going to freak out and say, well, we've got George Kittle. Why the heck would we want this kid? Because smart teams don't pass up players like this. And this is a gift if he somehow got to them. And with the positionless player movement that we're headed towards, you break the huddle with Kittle, with Pitts, with Ayuk, and with Deebo Samuel. You don't know who's lining up in the backfield, who's lining up at receiver, who's lining up at tight end. I mean, can you imagine Shanahan with his creativity, what he would do with that?
Oh, my Lord. And they're all physical. They're all physical. Yeah. They had and that's what, by the way, John Lynch loves that. So does Shanahan. They're like big physical guys. All right. So Daniel Jeremiah works with Joy. You're lucky. She's great to work with. So he's got Trevor Lawrence 1 to Urban Meyer and the Jags, Zach Wilson, and Jamar Chase. By the way, I only got a minute left. Sam Darnold, if you're the Jets, that means they're probably going to trade him. What's he worth?
Well, I think before the season, I would have said you get a 1, and then going through the season, I thought, man, that's you're not getting a 1, so you're looking at maybe a combination of some later picks. The interesting thing, Colin, when you look at who they hired and where they came from, do you think they might know what Kyle Shanahan thinks of Sam Darnold and what his value is from teams outside the league? I think that'll benefit them as they go through this process. But you mentioned it there. I'm not the lucky one. You're the lucky one because you get to work with Joy every single day. Yes. I only got to work with her 1 day a week.
You're right.
I've always known Joy was great from watching you, but working with her, it takes it to a whole nother level. She is the best.
She is. DJ. You are the best. Daniel, thank you very much. Daniel Jeremiah. Thanks, buddy.
See you, man.
Yes, Joy. Let's not go too crazy. Listen, I got to work with her Monday through Friday. Start puffing it up here, and it's going to be nothing but,
I'm start getting unruly.
Yeah, unruly, exactly. I said one nice thing about Goulet giving me hockey scores. I've had to deal with this for, a lot of years. Black Rifle.